Hey, what's up everyone? James from Junkyard Fox. Thank you so much for joining me, and today we have a very special video. So my longtime buddy Shane Linenberger, who has been featured on the Junkyard Fox channel several times, is actually going to be taking over this video, and we're going to be following along as he travels the beautiful Arizona desert and he sets up a very minimalist, primitive skills overnighter. So he is very talented in the older form of bushcraft. He knows a lot of skills that I myself do not possess. So, we're going to be following along as he finds a good source of firewood, as he finds a good campsite, as he gathers material to make a hand drill, and he's going to walk us through all that and how he goes about it. You're going to see his style, very old world, very Cody Lundin style. And he's a really cool dude. So he did send me the footage. I did edit it for him. Also, he did just recently start a channel, so be sure to give him a sub there so we can see his channel grow, and he can share some more information and great skills with us along. So big thank you to Shane for joining us, and big thank you for all of you guys for joining him. Let's get to it.
Alrighty, so I am in beautiful Arizona on some of my home turf. This is an area that I have been in many times and know very, very well. So I decided I would make a video with a minimal kit. It's just going to be an overnight trip, no 2 or 3 days this time, unfortunately. But I'm going to be using a very minimal kit and showing some skills. I did not bring a fire set, and so I'm going to be making friction fire off the land. And I did not bring water purification tablets or filters or anything like that. So if I don't get my fire off the land, I've got about, 54 ounces of water roughly, which is plenty for a day, like an overnight. So stay tuned and let's see how this goes. Y'all see that up there? That big black blob? Not a black bear. That is just one of the big old free range cattle that roams out here in the Arizona desert. They're very skittish. So she'll run off as soon as I start getting close. But I'm not even gonna give her the chance. I'm just gonna leave her alone and go a little different way. Before I forget to mention it again, this is seep willow. This is what I'm wanting to use for my hand drill spindle. I actually did already gather 1 piece and 2 pieces of soap tree yucca. I'm gonna keep on looking for good stuff, because if I find more good seep willow, I'm going to keep it, take it with. Because you can never have too many spindles. This is a soap tree yucca. You can make cordage from the fibers, and you can use the stalks for friction fire. So my plan is to use the seep willow spindle that I've gathered, or a better one if I find a better one, and soap tree yucca to make a hand drill set. Once I find water in camp, I'll probably look around a little bit longer for more materials, and then we'll get moving. Alright, I've found what looks to be a pretty constant water source. Here's some more seep willow. Pretty constant water source. So I'm going to look for somewhere to make my camp. Alright, so we found the spot I'm going to be at tonight. So I figured now is as good a time as any to show what I brought for gear. Now, this backpack looks like it's probably pretty loaded up. It's not. Let me explain. So, starting with the outside of the pack, I have a 1-quart Nalgene bottle and an 18-ounce, approximately, stainless steel cup. I also have a 24-ounce stainless steel bottle. In the desert, water is very important. If you're going to skimp on any piece of gear, don't let it be your water containers. So, the main body of the pack. Because I'm out here on my own, I did bring my full first aid kit. Probably not going to need this whatsoever, but better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. Like I said, I am out here alone. I'm recording everything myself. I don't have anyone to patch me up if I get hurt, so I'd rather have it with me. Only weighs like 1.5 pounds, 2 pounds anyway, so I'm not too worried. I have a backpacking solar panel. I am only carrying this to charge my phone for this video. Wouldn't have it with me otherwise. And then all else left in the main part of the pack is a wool blanket. It takes up a lot of room, so it makes the pack look really full and big. And it is full, but not because there's a lot of gear. Alright, into the front pocket. Got my keys. For emergency use, I have my headlamp. I'm probably not going to be using this whatsoever. But again, same as with the first aid kit, I'd rather have it and not use it than have some reason to need a light and not have one. Have a little bit of paracord. It's not a ton. I don't know how much it is specifically. I just wrapped it around my arm a few times. Probably 15 feet, maybe 20. A little bit of food. 2 oranges, a sweet potato, and I was given these backpacking pucks. It's just basically a protein bar, to my understanding. I haven't tried one yet, but I've got 2 of those. And then just a cord for charging my phone with the solar panel. So that is literally all that's in the pack. Then in my pocket, for emergencies, I have a signal whistle. It's a pretty loud one. So I'm not going to blast it 3 times because I'm not in any kind of trouble or distress. And I have my knife. I just forged this one this week at the Rabbit Stick Primitive Skills Gathering in Rexburg, Idaho. It's approximately a 5-inch blade, 4.5 or 5-inch handle. I didn't do any measurements with it. I have a full convex grind on it, and it's a fairly thin blade with Bacote wood handle scales and brass pins. Only other gear with me is my shemagh, which I just have up in a tree drying right now because it is soaked in sweat because I had it around my waist. So as has been mentioned a couple times so far, I didn't bring a modern fire starter of any kind. No matches, lighter, ferro rod, not even flint and steel, anything. So I'm going to be making fire by friction. On my hike in, which took significantly longer than I expected, I gathered a piece of seep willow to make a hand drill spindle and a couple pieces of soap tree yucca to make a fireboard. I am going to scout around the area just a little bit, see what other resources I have here, see if I can find more spindles or bigger pieces of yucca or maybe sotol or whatever. Alright, so I went ahead and moved sites. I like this spot a lot better. It's much more open, much more, I guess just, yeah, open mostly is why I moved. There are a couple of ant colonies here. There's this one right here. And there's another one right here. But I'm not worried about them. I'm not going to be sleeping on top of them, so they won't really bother me much. So I'm going to set myself up right here. So I'm going to go ahead and clear away a couple of these little plants. Get my fire set thrown together and gather some wood so I can make a fire. Alright, so I went ahead and cleared up my bedding area. So I'm going to go ahead and get my hand drill set put together now. So, as I had mentioned earlier, I have a piece of soap tree yucca that I'm going to use for my fireboard. I grabbed 2 in case one of them wasn't very good. So I'm going to go ahead and get my fireboard carved out. I'm just going to beaver chew around the stick and break off a chunk to make my fireboard with. Alright, so this is the piece I'm making my fireboard out of. So I'm going to go ahead and split it down. This piece feels like it should work out just fine. Carve my bottom of the fireboard flatter. Alright, that should work. So for my hand drill spindle, again, I have a piece of seep willow. Just going to go ahead and shave down my leaf nodes on here. Don't want them hurting my hands. Notice I'm going very slowly and carefully. I'm feeling with my hands, and anywhere that feels raised or rough or sharp and pokey, I'm very carefully shaving off from the bottom of the stalk. You always go in the direction of growth, otherwise you may split off or carve a large flat spot on your spindle. And again, it pays to just take your time with this. It's worth it, and it's not like it takes very long. And I'll go ahead and stop it right there. So I'm just going to score around my spindle and snap it off clean. Alright, so that is a very quick down and dirty hand drill set. So I'm going to go ahead and start setting it up. I'm going to trim the bottom of my spindle to a dull point. It doesn't need to be much, just about like that. And I'm going to take my fireboard, decide, let's say we're going to make it right here, and drill a small divot with the point of the knife. It doesn't have to be much, just enough to accept the tip of the spindle. That should work. Alright, I like to make my fires barefoot when I can. I just like being able to really feel the fireboard under my foot. That way if it starts to shift or anything, I can compensate. Because I'm on sand, I'm going to put my hat down and use this as kind of a base, so I'm not getting sand in my fire set. And so my fireboard doesn't sink into the sand. That's happened before, it's annoying. Alright, so I'm going to get it burned in. This is getting the spindle and the fireboard mated together. I'm not going to use much speed or pressure yet. I'm just getting it all warmed up. I'm going to use a little more pressure now, a little more speed. Alright, now my spindle is burned in, and my fireboard is burned in. So I'm going to put my spindle top down into the sand. We don't want to put the working end of the spindle in or on the ground if we can avoid it. So we're going to carve in the notch. So I've got tutorials on my channel on how to do this, so I'm not gonna walk it through on this video. I'm just gonna go ahead and do it. So I've got my hand drill set ready to go. So now I'm going to gather some firewood and we'll get going. Alright, so I'm gathering some cottonwood bark just from these down cottonwood branches here. Cottonwood bark makes an amazing tinder. So I'm gonna get a little bit more of this stuff and then keep on moving. This plant is called Devil's Claw because these little seed pods, when they dry out, look kind of sinister. Here's one of those Devil's Claws that I was mentioning a second ago. Pretty cool looking. When I was a kid, there was a local Christmas arts fair where people would sell stuff that they made that you could buy as inexpensive Christmas gifts, and there were Devil's Claws with little, forget the word, rhinestones. It was 1 or 2 Devil's Claws with rhinestone eyes. They were kind of neat. But yeah, this is what that seed pod turns into. Pretty neat. Alright, I gathered my firewood. Now I'm going to build a fire lay and get a fire going. The sun is now behind the canyon wall, so it's going to start cooling down. It's not going to be too cold tonight, it's just going to dip into the 50s. But I'm going to be sleeping next to the fire with my blanket, and it'll be real nice. So, let's build a fire lay. Basically, it's just going to be a framework that I'm going to be putting the smalls onto. It's pretty half-assed, but it'll do the job. Before we make the actual fire, we're going to make a down and dirty tinder bundle. You can just see the stuff is very fibrous. It makes an awesome tinder bundle. Right now I'm just throwing out the harder chunks of bark. That'll do. Alright. So when making a tinder bundle, you can do this a couple different ways. One way that I often do is I will make my tinder bundle over a bandana or something similar to catch all the fine dust that's going to be falling. I'm not going to worry about it this time. This cottonwood bark is so fibrous as it is that it'll almost definitely take the coal very quickly and easily. So just going to pulverize it in my hands, just grind it against itself. And I don't know if you can see it, but there's a lot of really good soft fine stuff that's falling. Stuff like this. I'm not worried about it. This is, like I said, a very soft, fluffy, fibrous material. It doesn't necessarily need all the dust. I like to wrap my tinder bundles because of how I bring it to flame, typically by waving in figure eights. It's nice to have the bundle being held together, so it's one less thing for me to worry about. Alright, so this is a coarse tinder bundle so far. I'm going to make more fine and medium and stuff it in here into the target area. And to make my fine and medium, I'm just grinding it in my palm. I'm basically making just a softer, finer material. And as I've mentioned several times, this bark is already very soft and fibrous. I don't necessarily need to do this, and I am going to be putting some from the ground into the tinder, but yeah, this stuff will go up real easy. So, here's my tinder bundle. Not as fine as I might make it in other situations or with other materials, but it'll work just fine for this. And the sooner I do this, the sooner these mosquitoes will leave me alone. And that'll be pretty nice. So they're getting kind of irritating. I'm going to change my stance. Get a little more downward pressure here. All right, there is a coal. All right, so now I can just take my time. I've got my coal, it's in my Tinder bundle, it's not going anywhere. Don't have to rush this. And we have fire. Just like that. I'm making sure that I'm not putting everything right on the tinder, making sure there's plenty of air. We don't want to snuff out our fire that we just worked so hard on. To give a frame of reference, I got out of the Jeep at about 2:45, and it is now about 5:45. So it's been about 3 hours to this point. Between all of the hiking in, locating a good spot, sourcing materials, gathering firewood, etc. Took about 3 hours. I probably made the hand drill look fairly easy. It's not. I just have a lot of practice, a lot of experience. I've been making friction fire for 3 years, or not 3 years, 5 years, and have gotten to be quite proficient. This is the area that I have the most experience with friction fire making. I know what materials work, I know how to find them, where to find them, and thankfully it's pretty easy to find sets and materials that you can use same day here. That's not the case everywhere. So I'll go ahead and throw a couple bigger sticks on the fire because now it's burning pretty good. Let it burn for a while, and then we will cook our sweet potato. So I just put this big log on. There's no need to break it down further. It'll burn in half, and then I can push in the ends. And that's mesquite. So it'll burn hot and it'll burn for a long time. So I mean, I have more wood, but I'm not going to have to put it on for quite a while. It's pretty nice. Starting to get a little darker. It's not dark right now by any means, it's dusk. But I'm letting the fire burn low. I've got my sweet potato buried in there to bake. I have it buried in the sand with coals on top. It'll take a while, so I'm not even going to worry about it for now. Might even just let it stay till morning. It shouldn't burn or anything since it's buried in the sand, so we'll see. But for now, we're just relaxing. Alright, it is morning. I slept pretty decently. It did get colder than expected. This is actually the last of the wood on the fire right now. That mesquite does burn really nicely. That lump right there is my sweet potato. I hadn't buried it as well as I thought, and so it is now basically a lump of charcoal. But that's okay. No sweet potato for breakfast, but that's not the end of the world. The sun's going to be coming up over the crest on that mountain before too long, so I'm going to try to get a little bit more sleep in before it does. And when I do decide to get back up, I will pack up and probably start heading out. Alright, so I'm starting to slowly break camp. I've got my fire spread out a little bit to help it cool down. I'm going to be dousing this with water. It's going to take a good few trips to and from the creek to get enough to cool this down, but I'm going to do that. I also wanted to cover a topic that doesn't really get talked about too much. And that is, when nature calls, you have to answer. So, in the desert, if you're out here and it's an emergency scenario, or you're out to test yourself, or whatever, probably not bringing toilet paper. So, two alternatives right here are smooth rocks. And you want to make sure that they are smooth. You don't want to be tearing yourself up. And sycamore leaves. The sycamore leaf is much more like the toilet paper that your body is used to in terms of softness. And then a third option is juniper. Now, if you're going to use juniper, it does have some good qualities. It's antibacterial and antimicrobial, but you do want to be choosy. You want to get juniper that's nice and soft and fluffy. You don't want to just get, like, this stuff is pretty rough. It wouldn't be very great. So, that's 3 options for wiping. And then, for your cat hole. If you're going to be in a spot long term, dig a latrine. That's going to be a hole about 6 to 8 inches and a couple feet long. This is just about a foot long by about 6-7 inches deep. You don't want it to be much shallower than that, because you don't want to be leaving it close to the surface where animals are going to be digging it up, and if there's other people in the area, you don't want them to have to deal with that. In areas like this with sand, it's very easy to dig. In other areas, it might take you a while. So if you've got a feeling that you're going to need one, dig a hole before you need it. Alright, the sun is coming into camp now. So I'm going to start breaking camp. I'm going to pack up first, and then I will start dumping water on what is left of my fire. Another thing I wanted to mention here while I'm breaking camp, anything that you don't want to get wet, like a fire set and tinder, can be hung up on branches overnight. That way, if there is any condensation on the ground, any dew, whatever, it's not going to be soaking your tinder in your fire set. Same goes for any fabrics that you might have that you don't want to get wet, an extra shirt, socks, bandana, whatever. Just put it up on some branches and it'll be just fine. Looks like the workday is starting for the red ant colony. Hiking out right now, and just gotta say, I love cow trails. They're like the highways of the Arizona high and low deserts. This is probably twice as fast as when I came in, because when I came in I purposely took the creek so I could look for resources. But here, I'm right next to the creek and making great time. Creek is just over that way. So yeah, cow trails, fantastic. Alright, so I'm about back to the Jeep. I can see it from here. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up my video. So, as a recap, I hiked in a couple miles, found resources along the way, made an off-the-land hand drill set, and as for gear, I only use my water bottles, my metal cup, my blanket, and a backpack to carry it. And my knife, of course. So, that about sums up and wraps up this video. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, or whatever, put them in the comment section down below. And we'll see you next time.